doesn't work? Who doesn't work?
Labor unions claim they represent workers, but many workers say the union doesn't represent me.
Unions are killing this country, and unions put my father's business out of business.
Who doesn't work?
The union protests started in Wisconsin, but they've spread. And it's good that the media is covering this because America's going broke. So we need a serious discussion about government workers' unions and their deals. In New York City, some people told me union contracts protect people.
Wisconsin need to, back up and allow the union to do their job.
What side are you on?
Well, since I'm a government worker, I guess I don't have to tell you.
In Wisconsin, unions and the Democrats demand what they call their right to collective bargaining. Collective bargaining sounds good. Why shouldn't workers be able to band together and bargain as a group? Rick Berman's executive director of a group called Center for Union Facts. Why shouldn't they be able to do that? But before we get to that, Ethan Pollack is from the liberal think tank, the Economic Policy Institute. He supports the unions. I mean, collective bargaining is one reason, I'm told, states go broke. Unions elect their bosses who pay them back. It's a money pump. It goes from taxpayers to the union worker. He pays dues to the union gives to the candidate who promised us to do more for the union workers, and round and round.
Yeah, no, I mean, collective bargaining is not causing states to go broke, in part because states are not broke.
I don't think so.
They have shortfalls that are caused mainly from the economic recession. But the point here is that there's a lot of occupations in the public sector where they don't have a lot of other places to turn. If you're a firefighter, if you're a policeman, if you're a teacher, there's not a lot of private sector analog. Basic Economics 101 would tell you that if you don't have an appropriate countervailing force on the worker side, then you will actually have, then the government will be able to drive down wages and drive down compensation below the market efficient point.
But federal workers don't have collective bargaining rights.
They do.
Federal workers? Carter outlawed it.
They have unions, and look. The point here is that state and local workers are underpaid and undercompensated. None of them are vastly overpaid.
That does not compute.
And therefore, it's impossible for them to actually be bankrupting the states.
I would think they are paid more than private sector workers, but it's not the pay as much, it's the pension deal. So the politician comes in, makes a deal, and he's long out of office when the pension deal comes due, and they're assuming an 8% rate of return. That's going to bankrupt states because they're not going to make 8% on their money.
Certainly they will, actually. If you look at the
Are you making 8% on your money? I'm making 2% on mine.
Well, pensions are a little different, and if you actually
look
at...
Well, you know what, John? They're not making 8% on their money. Nobody's making 8% on their money. And every year that you miss 8%, you have to do that much better in the subsequent years because it's 8% and there's an assumption that that 8% is being compounded. The problem is that there really isn't collective bargaining. What we've really had here is a collective conspiracy between the unions and the politicians who are trying to see to it that they continue to do well by the unions and keep getting political contributions. It's not labor versus management as it is in the private sector. It's labor versus the taxpayers.
All right, you call it a collective conspiracy, but a New York Times poll this week found 60% of Americans support the collective bargaining right.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, this is not a right.
Yeah, they did word the poll
I just want to make one thing clear. These are privileges that are granted by the states. And you can go back. Franklin Roosevelt didn't think that this was right for public workers. Even George Meany, the head of the AFL-CIO, said that this wasn't really appropriate for public sector workers.
What about that?
It's not a right.
It's sort of weird. I mean, these are your guys, FDR, George Meany, and they're saying, yeah, public sector workers, this isn't going to work.
Look, it's not that That's silly. The broader point is that a lot of these governors are looking to solve their budget problems on the backs of a lot of these middle-class workers.
Now, you talk about middle-class workers, and a lot of people believe the unions represent the middle-class workers, but let's remember the unions represent barely 10% of the 12% of the workers total, so most in the middle class are not represented by the unions at all. I don't know why you say unions speak for workers.
Well, they do in part because they push for a lot of things that don't just help them. I mean, for example, unions are very active on like the estate tax, for example. Now, what do they have to gain by pushing for the estate tax and making sure that rich people pay their fair share?
Rick Berman?
I'll tell you why they push for higher taxes, because the majority of the budget of state and county and cities is for employees. And so if there's more tax revenue coming in from the taxpayer, then the unions can sustain the wage rates and the benefit levels that they want.
It looks like a Tea Party rally. Crowds of Americans protesting their government. But of course, most of the protesters in America today are not Tea Partiers. They're the unions protesting their state governments. And lately, polls suggest many Americans side with the unions. So, are these union protests the equivalent of a Tea Party on the left? Will they swing the pendulum back toward bigger government? Let's ask a pro-union guy, David Callahan. He co-founded Demos, the progressive think tank. Also here from the real Tea Party to fight back is Matt Kibbe, head of Freedom Works. You're toast. His side, as the unions are taking over, public is swinging back with them. True?
I don't think it's true at all. If you look at what's going on in Madison, that is a quite typical special interest protest of government workers who want more benefits. They want more money from their government.
The Tea Party is a genuine, honest, small government movement. Your side is special interest.
Well, I think we are seeing a watershed movement here with what's happening in Wisconsin. For a lot of people, this has become so much more than just a negotiation between the governor and unions. I mean, we have just come through a decade where the rich have gotten richer. Most of the income gains have gone to the top 1%. We've had a financial collapse triggered by Wall Street greed. The solution of Tea Party people is, hey, let's balance the budgets on the back of teachers, of firefighters, of poor people. Let's close down our park system. And, I think a lot of people feel enough already. This has gone too far. Governor Walker has not asked for any sacrifice on the part of the wealthy people in Wisconsin. Maybe the Americans who've done so well in the past decade should help get us out of this situation.
Your response?
Well, tragically, I don't think either Washington or Madison have cut anything yet. And there's some hope that we could get to a modicum of fiscal responsibility. I think what you hear from Tea Party activists is a simple value that government shouldn't spend money it doesn't have. And if you look at government workers in Wisconsin, compare their salaries, their benefits to their equivalent in the private sector, they make twice as much.
Maryland said, we want to tax millionaires. They said it would take in $100 million. They lost $200 million.
Well,
people left. Rich people will escape your onerous taxes.
Look, I mean, California, New York City, two of the highest tax rates, tax places you can live, filled with rich people.
Matt, what about that?
California is also filled with debt. They're about to...
That's because they won't raise taxes, Matt. I mean, why not ask for shared sacrifice? This is one of the things that is really ticking people off. The sense that, tough times, we all got to pitch in, we got to dig out of this hole. Everybody should do their part, but especially the people who've done the best. And Matt, what is it? Why not raise taxes on the wealthy? What's wrong with that?
Why would you reward government for so poorly managing their budgets? We spent too much, we didn't get the job done, therefore we're going to go to the taxpayers again. It's the fundamental difference between the private sector and the public sector. In the private sector, if you have less revenue, you tighten your belt. Spending on education in Wisconsin has doubled from 1998 to 2008. What has performance done? Over 2/3, according to the Department of Education, over 2/3 of 8th graders in Wisconsin can't read at a proficient level.